When you spend enough time digging through old Marvel comics, the weird one-shots, the forgotten runs, dusty corners of crossover events no one talks about anymore, you start to notice a pattern, not just of abandoned heroes, but villains too. For every Magneto or Green Goblin, there are dozens who slip through the cracks. Some are weird, some are terrifying, some were genuinely too ambitious for the era they were introduced in, and some just got the short end of the editorial roulette. This video is about those villains, the ones who had the potential to be the bigger threats, the ones who made the heroes uncomfortable, the ones who could have been the next Venom if the timing had been right. These are the antagonists Marvel left behind, and why they might actually work better today than they ever did back then. Death-Stalker, killer who couldn't stay in one world. There are forgotten villains, and then there's Death-Stalker, a guy who literally exists between dimensions and still managed to almost disappear from Marvel entirely. Originally, he went by the Exterminator, because comic books in 1968 weren't exactly known for their subtle branding. His real name was Philip Wallace Sterling, a rich megalomaniac who built a teleportation device called the T-Ray, and tried to launch a criminal empire by placing his enemies into limbo. Naturally, Daredevil ruined that plan, but in the process, the Exterminator got caught in a blast of his own T-Ray and was seemingly killed. Except he wasn't. Instead, he became Death-Stalker, a man stuck between dimensions, able to phase in and out of reality, teleport across the world, and watch everything happen in the earthly plane without anyone noticing. And when he did decide to show up, he'd come armed with a pair of AIM-designed microwave gloves, a death grip that could kill on contact. He became a literal ghost with a killer touch. And the scariest part, he wasn't insane, he was calculating, patient, and smart enough to build all this himself. This wasn't your average get-rich crook. Death-Stalker was more like a paranormal tactician, silently observing from beyond, timing his strikes, and then vanishing before anyone could retaliate. He assembled teams like the Unholy Three, dabbled in occult tech, messed around with Lemurian mirror weapons, and even tried to rebuild his old T-Ray, permanently control the space between dimensions. And he really had it out for Daredevil. Most of his appearances were built around long game assassination attempts, many of which came dangerously close to succeeding. He knew Daredevil's identity, he targeted Karen Page, he wasn't just a nuisance, he was a psychological threat. So, why did Marvel drop him? Partly the death. In one of the more ironic demises in Marvel history, Death-Stalker got a little too comfortable shifting through matter, and during a nighttime cemetery fight, accidentally phased into a tombstone. He died instantly. Power turned against him in the most fitting way possible. But here's the thing, we all know comic book death isn't permanent, especially not for a guy already living outside reality, and yet Sterling stayed gone. Marvel teased a comeback once or twice. A Villains for Hire version showed up in 2011, this time as a mysterious female Death-Stalker working for the Purple Man. But the character never got a proper revival, which is a shame, because in a modern context, this concept sings. Cold-blooded assassin who can spy from beyond space, vanish into thin air, and reach out with a literal death touch. That's tailor-made for modern Marvel horror. Picture a cross between The Ring, Ghost in the Shell, Quantum Leap, with hit jobs, graveyards, and a lot of microwave murder. Death-Stalker's whole aesthetic, black coat, haunted by science, would kill in the right miniseries. You could tie him into Damage Control, AIM, even Doctor Doom's tech black market. Make him the horror villain who stalks superheroes from beyond the veil. Or, imagine if he became a dark multiversal fixer, assassinating targets across timelines in exchange for the promise of returning to full life. Marvel has embraced the weird lately. We've gotten body horror from Venom, multiverse messiness, and grim government ops. So tell me there's no room for a half-dead man with a death glove and unfinished business. Death-Stalker's not just a villain who deserves a comeback, he's a genre waiting to happen. Slayback, Weapon X's forgotten cybernetic sadist. Some villains fade because they were boring. Slayback didn't have that problem. This guy was a full-on nightmare, a cybernetic sadist, a Weapon X dropout, and a man who treated murder like an art form. He wasn't subtle, he wasn't sympathetic, he just really liked hurting people. Slayback, real name Gregory Territon, first appeared in Deadpool The Circle Chase #1 in 1993, created by Fabian Nicieza and Joe Madureira. At the time when Marvel was leaning heavily into gritty, hyper-violent anti-heroes and mercs for hire. This was peak 90s, when everything had pouches, every origin involved a shadowy government program, and the line between hero and psychopath was getting blurrier by the month. Slayback fit right in. His design screams cyberpunk monster. Twisted limbs, blade fingers, exposed tech, and a permanent scowl. And while other Weapon X experiments wrestled with guilt or lost humanity, Slayback just enjoyed the violence. He was Deadpool without the jokes. Sabretooth without moral ambiguity. Pure murder on legs. And then he died. During their first major confrontation, Deadpool realized the only way to stop him was to blow him up completely. That would be the end of most characters. But Slayback's healing factor was even more disturbing than Wade's. He eventually reformed, over the course of 10 years. By the time he came back, first in the Circle Chase, then again in Deadpool and Wolverine side stories, he had one goal: kill Wade Wilson, tortured Copycat, slashed up Kane, played tic-tac-toe by carving into Wade's chest, and treated every encounter like a slasher movie. He was terrifying, but he never quite stuck. So, why did Slayback vanish? There are reasons. For one, he was a character designed to die. His role in the Circle Chase was to escalate the stakes, show Wade's desperation, and then get disintegrated by Zero. He was a horror movie villain built for a one-and-done arc. And while he was memorable, his narrative was very closed-loop. Second, Deadpool evolved. By the early 2000s, the tone around Deadpool shifted. Writers leaned harder into comedy, absurdist storytelling, and fourth wall breaking. Slayback's ultra-serious, torture-happy persona didn't really fit in that direction. He was a little too dark to be funny, and a little too shallow to support a long-term arc. And third, Slayback just didn't get much page time. Aside from the Circle Chase, a few Weapon X related appearances, and some handbooks, he's never had a major arc or reinvention. Marvel never gave him the sympathetic monster treatment or the Legacy reboot. He was left in the cold while Deadpool's rogue gallery got weirder and louder. But here's the thing, that could be a strength. Slayback is a blank slate. You don't need to retcon or course correct anything. You just need to take what already works, his obsession with pain, his body's horror aesthetic, his Weapon X past, and update it. Recast him as a stalking, regenerating revenant. Let him be Marvel's answer to the Terminator, a cybernetic assassin with no cause, just appetite. There's a reason he keeps surviving, because if there's one thing worse than a killer with a purpose, it's a killer who just likes it. Brothers Grimm, fairy tale freaks who never got their ending. At first glance, the Brothers Grimm seem like a joke. Two grown men dressed like evil Victorian puppets, throwing exploding eggs and magic beans. It sounds like a rejected Batman villain concept. But look a little closer and you'll find that Percy and Barton Grimes might be some of the strangest, most overlooked threat in Marvel's entire rogue gallery. Characters were created by Dan Mishkin, Gary Cohn, and Alan Kupperberg, and first appeared as a duo in Iron Man number 187 in 1984. Technically, their powers come from the original Brothers Grimm, two magical mannequins introduced earlier in the Spider-Woman comics. But it was Percy and Barton who really ran with the idea, making it even weirder. The Grimes brothers were originally sleazy adult theater owners in Los Angeles. After buying a rundown venue, they stumbled across something no real estate agent could have predicted: the enchanted costumes of the original Brothers Grimm. Naturally, they tried them on, and because this is Marvel, the costumes gave them superpowers. They weren't exactly subtle. Grimes twins used their newly found reality warping arsenal to go after a business rival, and were quickly slapped down by Iron Man, James Rhodes at the time. But they didn't stop there. The Brothers Grimm leaned into their chaotic magic theme hard, joining the Night Shift and fighting everyone from Moon Knight to Hawkeye to Spider-Man during the Acts of Vengeance event. At one point, they even tried to cut off Clint Barton's arm for a bounty. That's dedication. Their powers are bizarre in the best way. Conjuring pies full of blackbirds, paralytic fairy dust, explosive bean seeds, razor-sharp golden thread. If it sounds like something out of a Grimm's fairy tale, they can weaponize it. They float around on flying stars and clouds like deranged circus performers who wandered into a superhero comic and decided to stay. And somehow it works. Even Captain America admitted that they were dangerous because you never knew what they'll pull out next. So, why did Marvel forget them? For one, they've never had a strong central identity. Are they mystical pranksters, deranged performance artists, low-tier mobsters with enchanted toys? Marvel's never quite decided. They've mostly been used as filler in villain gangs, the Hood's Crew, Camp Hammer, or assorted anti-hero smackdowns, without ever really getting a story of their own. Second, their aesthetic is weird. Not gritty, not scary, just weird. And Marvel, especially in the 2000s and 2010s, leaned heavily into grounded or edgy reinventions. The Brothers Grimm, they throw exploding magic eggs and ride clouds. They don't scream Netflix adaptation material. But maybe that's the whole point. Bring them back in for a Doctor Strange arc, or as creepy reoccurring foes in a Moon Knight run. Play up the horror in their surreal fairy tale magic. Lean into the idea of villains who don't just kill, but humiliate and confuse. There's something deeply unsettling about enemies who seem like a joke until you're choking on cursed stardust or tangled in thread that cuts like wire. They've already fought Spider-Man, Cap, Moon Knight, and the West Coast Avengers. All they need is a writer who sees past the gimmicks and stars, and recognizes that these guys are chaos with the stage show. They were never really supposed to make sense, and maybe that's why I think they would work today. Dreadknight, the villain who hates Doctor Doom almost as much as the heroes do. If Dracula cosplayed Doctor Doom and rode a bioengineered demon horse, you get something close to Dreadknight. Created by Bill Mantlo and George Tuska, Dreadknight first appeared in Iron Man number 101 in 1977, and has been lingering in the darker corners of the Marvel Universe ever since. His real name is Bram Velsing, and yes, he's from Latveria. But unlike most citizens of Doom's homeland, Velsing didn't worship their metal masked monarch. He hated him. Velsing was a gifted scientist, but he was also arrogant. He openly referred to Doom as a grotesque mockery of a man, and believed himself to be the true genius of Latveria. As you can guess, that didn't go well. In classic Doom fashion, Victor didn't kill him. Instead, he used a biofuser to graft a steel skull mask onto Velsing's face. A permanent scar that forced Velsing to wear the kind of mask he once mocked. Velsing fled Doom's rule and wound up in Castle Frankenstein, where Victoria Frankenstein, yes, of that Frankenstein bloodline, took him in and nursed him back to health. She also for some reason decided to give him access to a winged hell horse grown from the same DNA as the Black Knight's steed Aragorn. That's when Velsing re-emerged as Dreadknight, a vengeful armored villain flying on a mutated nightmare horse and wielding a high-tech power lance, gas pistols, and electrified bolas. Equal parts medieval horror and sci-fi menace. He should have been a A-tier villain. Instead, he spent most of his career losing to Iron Man, Spider-Man, Captain Britain, and Frankenstein's monster. Yes, that Frankenstein monster. He even did a stint with the Frightful Four and the Masters of Evil. He has worked both with and against Doctor Doom over the years, always with that deep simmering hatred for the man who mutilated him. He's the rare villain who isn't just power hungry or psychotic. He's a tragic figure whose obsession with revenge defined his entire arc. So why did Marvel forget him? Dreadknight is a concept that walks a weird line. He's got the gothic flair of Dracula, the armor of a medieval knight, and the gear of a 1970s science villain. He's not magic enough for Doctor Strange's world, not grounded enough for Captain America's, and too over the top for most street-level stories. He's been visually striking, but tonally hard to place. And as a result, he's been pushed to the fringes. But here's the thing, Marvel didn't entirely forget about him. He recently popped up in the storyline One World Under Doom, where he joined the Mad Thinkers Masters of Evil to invade the Impossible City. Still seething about Doom, still riding that hell horse, and still wearing that damn metal skull. Dreadknight actually gets some decent action here, before being taken out by a radio tower and later thrown down shaft by Sam Wilson. He even gets mind-hacked by the Impossible City's AI and forced into another temporary defeat. But hey, he's there, and maybe that's a sign, because for all his past losses, Dreadknight still brings something unique to the Marvel Universe. A Latvian rebel scarred by Doom, carrying all the medieval gothic magic you expect, paired with high-tech sci-fi gear and a horse from hell. That's a villain screaming for a modern-day horror-tinged redemption arc, or at least a really cool miniseries. Just give him the right writer, the right tone, and finally let him step out from Doom's shadow. Bloodaxe, the axe that corrupts and the woman Marvel forgot. Sometimes it's not the person who makes the weapon, it's the weapon that makes the person into something they never expected. Enter Bloodaxe, villain born from one of the most dangerous relics in Asgardian history. Created by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz, Bloodaxe first appeared in Thor 449 in 1992, though their full identity and transformation wouldn't be revealed until later. At first glance, Bloodaxe looked just like another beefed up 90s villain. Towering, armor-clad, and soaked in the shadows. But the truth was a lot more complicated, and a lot more tragic. Bloodaxe is the cursed legacy of Scourge the Executioner, a classic Thor villain who wielded a massive enchanted axe. After Scourge's death, the axe was lost, until a mysterious figure discovered it, and was instantly transformed by its power. The weapon didn't just give the new wielder superhuman strength and mystical energy, it corrupted their mind. Whoever picked it up would become a violent, vengeful juggernaut fueled by bloodlust and rage. For a while, no one even knew who Bloodaxe was. The comics kept the identity hidden in silhouette, partly to build suspense, and partly because the transformation increased the user's mass so dramatically that readers couldn't even tell if Bloodaxe was male or female. Writers dropped hints that it could be anyone, a villain, a side character, even one of Eric Masterson's closest allies. And that's where the twist came in. When the truth finally emerged, Bloodaxe turned out to be Jackie Lucas, a close friend and love interest of Eric Masterson, the man who had recently served as a stand-in for Thor and was now operating under the name Thunderstrike. Jackie hadn't been evil, she'd been overwhelmed. The axe didn't empower her, it twisted her soul, transforming her into a remorseless vigilante who took pleasure in killing gang members and supervillains alike. Thunderstrike was eventually able to defeat her and take the axe for himself, but not without consequences. In one of the most underappreciated character arcs of the 90s, Eric Masterson himself became corrupted by the axe, while trying to save the world from the death god Set. After the battle, Weapon's evil wouldn't let go. Unable to trust himself and unwilling to endanger others, Masterson made the ultimate sacrifice. He died to destroy the Bloodaxe once and for all. Or so we thought. Years later, Dan Jurgens' Thor run, the axe mysteriously reappeared. Even Thor used it briefly, only to feel its curse creeping in again. Eventually, he destroyed the weapon with the Odin Force. Hopefully for good this time. So, why did Marvel forget Bloodaxe? Bloodaxe is one of those villains who should have had more staying power. The design? Striking. The concept? Heavy metal meets Greek tragedy. And the idea of a cursed weapon that can turn someone, anyone, into a living engine of destruction? That's timeless. But part of the problem is that the character was so tightly tied to Thunderstrike, a hero who Marvel killed off in the mid-90s and kept in the ground for decades. Once Eric Masterson was gone, Jackie Lucas faded away too. And because Bloodaxe's origin is so connected to the emotional fallout of Eric's story, she never found her own footing outside of it. Bloodaxe is a great example of what happens when Marvel builds compelling legacy villains, but doesn't keep the legacy going. But the potential is still there. In a modern story, Bloodaxe could absolutely be resurrected. Not just the weapon, but the idea of a curse that chooses its host and strips away their humanity piece by piece. You can even explore what happens if Jackie returns, haunted by what she became and terrified it could happen again. In a universe filled with gods, symbiotes, and monsters, an axe that turns heroes into villains just might be the scariest weapon of them all. So, that's 5 villains pulled out of Marvel's Forgotten Rogues gallery. Villains who are creepy, chaotic, bizarre, and sometimes a little ahead of their time. Whether it was editorial neglect, shifting trends, or just bad timing, these characters never got the second shot they deserved. But in today's storytelling landscape, with the right creative team and a fresh angle, there's no reason villains like Slayback or Death-Stalker couldn't be terrifying all over again. If you like this one, let me know in the comments. Who do you think Marvel left behind? Because I've got a huge list that's still growing. And if you're wondering whether DC has its own graveyard of forgotten weirdos, oh trust me, that's coming soon. Hit like, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.